Welcome back to the CFB Battle Royale. I am your host Greggles, and we are going to be doing the Big 12 now. So, unlike the last two, which were 14-team conferences, this is going to be a 10-team conference, so hopefully this one goes fairly quickly. This is going to be the smallest conference we've done so far, but not the smallest in total. That is going to be the Independents coming up in 2 rounds. So, alright, so let's begin. Just like all the last games, it's going to be very slow to begin with, followed by a lot of fighting very, very quickly afterwards. So let's just start going and see what happens. Just like all the other ones from the beginning, every team is going to be doing a lot of just building and preparing. Usually by about turn 80 to 100, we'll start seeing some military units. By about turn 150, we should probably see our first war. With there being less teams and less space, this may actually be a lot quicker of a process, so we will see. So there are, I think, 2 teams with or 2 conferences with 10 teams, with the Big 10 and the Big 12 and the Sun Belt. There's 1 conference with 7 teams in the Independents. The American is 11, the ACC, SEC, Big 10, and the. I think that's it. Those all have 14. Then everyone else has 12. So it's a bunch of different maps, all basically the same layout. And you can kind of see some expansion happening now. So we'll see, it looks like Oklahoma State's kind of going north. Everyone's kind of moving towards the center. No one's really moving towards anybody else. Texas moved a little bit towards Texas Tech, but very slightly. Baylor moving out to the north. Iowa State moved towards Kansas. Kansas State moved towards Oklahoma, who I don't think is expanded yet. Maybe one. No, it looks like they've been pretty much the same as they were. So West Virginia looks pretty much the same as Oklahoma on the other end of the continent. So everything's looking good. Alright, so the Longhorns have expanded towards Texas Tech. TCU has expanded outwards. You can see them kind of going this way around that lake. Let's see. We're at about turn 38 now, so it's going to be a few more turns till we start seeing military units. Right now, everyone's still just building out their first few tile improvements. So it's going to be a little bit slow to start, but then it's going to ramp right up. Especially for these smaller team conferences, or smaller conferences. They're going to be. The American was kind of like that, but this one I feel like is going to be even more. It's just going to be really quick, rapid war and destruction. So that's what I'm hoping for. Alright, so no military units left, yet. Texas did just build the Great General. They have Sun Tzu. So did Oklahoma State. So they have both of them have great generals, but that's it so far. Nothing yet. So let's just keep going. It's gonna. I'm gonna bet you that the first unit's gonna be a catapult. They've all been catapults so far, so I bet you they're gonna stick with it and continue with the catapult theme. So Iowa State and Kansas are both now touching. Same with Texas and Kansas State. Or, sorry, TCU. Texas and TCU. Too many teams are the same colors in each conference. Texas and TCU are touching. Iowa State and Kansas are touching. And that's it. So those 2 teams are going to have issues with each other being right next to their borders. Texas is also expanding towards Texas Tech, who's expanding back towards Texas. So we're going to see some fights there. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, as well as Oklahoma and Kansas State. So we're starting to run out of room now. So room is getting sparse. People are going to start fighting here for space. We'll start seeing military units built up quickly here very soon. We're at almost turn 80, which is about when we usually start seeing the first military unit. I would say it's very early on for the most technologies. Everyone looked like they had 21. So no military yet. Here's turn 80. Will we see it? No. Not yet, but it's coming. A lot of great generals. A lot of teams start out with great generals. Texas just had a great artist, which doesn't really help them in this game, but if they appreciate the arts, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. It's not going to help them take over the world, but that's okay. There it is. Iowa State builds the first catapult of the game. So they are going to have that advantage of being first, but that does not give them... Don't let that think that they're going to win now. Baylor builds a great general, but and TCU builds a caravan, but no other military units yet. So turn 90, 91, I think it was when that came out. So not too far. Alright, there was a great artist in Kansas State and Oklahoma. And Texas now also has their own catapult. Everyone's got a great artist. I just saw it going around and around. I saw Texas Tech and West Virginia have one too. There's TCU's. So everyone's getting art. Alright, so there's TCU's catapult. So everyone's starting to get their military built now. So in the next few turns, we'll probably see a war or two. In like the next 50 or so turns. Would be my guess. Alright, so Iowa State now has their second catapult. As does Texas. So Texas and Iowa State are definitely ahead militarily. But again, with so many people in such close proximity, that doesn't necessarily matter. You can make a great move against somebody, but then be backstabbed by 3 other people who are right next to you, and then you die. So the large military in this game does help. It's really the city count that seems to be the thing that sets a team ahead. If you can take cities early and often, you'll be okay. Iowa State does build their third catapult, which will help them out, but Texas is right behind with their own third catapult. So Iowa State and Texas are in kind of a Cold War situation. Oklahoma gets theirs. Their first one, at least. Kansas has 2 caravans, which are going to be good for getting gold, which will help you buy units if you need them later. Oklahoma quickly builds their second catapult as well. They must have purchased that one. TCU has 3 catapults as well. And Texas now has a swordsman, which is the first melee unit we see in the game. So Texas now has the ability to capture cities. Kansas State, Baylor, West Virginia, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State are behind. They don't have any military yet whatsoever. But I bet you some of those are not too far behind. They will be producing one shortly, I bet. So let's see here. We're going to keep going. We're going to see... Texas is looking pretty aggressive. TCU is looking pretty aggressive. I bet we'll see a war in this general area first. Iowa State's looking pretty good though too. They now also have a swordsman, so they can invade. I bet you will see more of a team that invades someone that doesn't have a military first before we see 2 big teams going against each other. But Texas has got pikemen, swordsmen, so Texas is coming out of the gate ready to go. Iowa State's not too far behind them. Oklahoma's looking pretty good. So we may see pretty decent war between those guys. Oklahoma State still has no military. Kansas State did build a catapult, so did Kansas. West Virginia and Texas Tech don't have anything yet either. So the 3 teams, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and West Virginia without a military at the moment. And Baylor. Sorry, Baylor as well does not have anything. So, just because they don't have a military now does not mean that they're out. UCF didn't build a military till very late in the game, and they came in 3rd place. 3rd or 4th. So, didn't win, but it didn't hurt them too bad. But you do want one because you want a military early because you need a military you need to take cities over. That's been the name of this game. But this small of a map and only having one city per team, if you can capture cities and then use them, that gives you a significant advantage over everyone else. And there's the first war of the game. West Virginia manages to build a catapult, which I guess is enough and all it needs to join forces with Iowa State in a war against Baylor. So Iowa State has 3 catapults and a swordsman, and West Virginia has a single catapult. So together, that's not too bad. Baylor has the most well-fed people, but you can't throw food at an enemy and hope that they lose. So, all right, let's try. Let's see what happens here. So Iowa State doesn't seem fully committed. West Virginia is quickly ramping up military production with another catapult. They're not fully invading Baylor yet. They're still trying to figure out what they want to do. So, down in the South, Texas and TCU are definitely the biggest powerhouses of military. Oklahoma is very close behind. Oklahoma State finally built a horseman. So it's just Texas Tech now without a single military unit. They're too busy eating tortillas and hanging out. So we'll see what happens. I bet you Texas will invade Texas Tech here very soon. I'll probably see that declaration of war shortly, would be my guess. So West Virginia sent a little bit out. Baylor does now have 2 composite bowmen to help defend themselves, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. They're going to lose that worker, so Baylor now has no more workers again, and Iowa State is going to start invading. West Virginia does make peace. Baylor has a horseman now, so they're holding their own. The war with the two-sided war has kind of kicked Baylor's military production into gear. It's a bit slow starting, but it's okay now. Texas kind of probing that Texas Tech land, seeing if it's worth invading or not. Baylor's military is holding out pretty well against Iowa State. They'll be okay. So what Iowa State should have done is wait until... I'll get to that in a second. Wait until they were the size of Texas's or TCU's or so, or Oklahoma's before they invaded, because then they could have taken McLean Stadium no problem. Alright, now we'll get to it. Texas Tech just built the Terracotta Army, which gives you 1 extra unit of each different type of military you have. So let's say if you're Texas and you have a catapult, a composite bowman, a pikeman, long swordsman, chariot archer, you get 1 more of each of those. When you have no military, building the Terracotta Army does absolutely nothing, except for not allow anyone else to build it. So it's not a stupid move like some of you may think. It was smart, not because it's going to give you a bigger military, but it's going to prevent anyone else from having a even bigger military against you. So it's not a great move, but there's reason behind it. It's not great, though. So, and that's how they're going to pay for that. Texas and West Virginia team up and invade Texas Tech, who finally, after building the Terracotta Army, builds their first military unit of the game. So, it was a bold strategy. I don't think it's going to pay off. They prevented everyone else from being able to use it. They rush out a horseman from production, who immediately runs into Texas's front lines and gets destroyed with no effort whatsoever. They build another horseman, so they've been just saving up gold as Texas begins their invasion of Jones AT&T Stadium. And so the battle begins. The stadium begins to take damage. It's down to about half health. Texas needs to be careful that TCU does not invade them here. They're leaving their capital very open, as Jones AT&T is brought down to the red and captured. So Texas Tech is the first team eliminated from the game. They didn't build a military until they went to war with somebody, so that cost them dearly, and Texas came in and took them out of the game. So F in the chat for Texas Tech as the first team eliminated from the Big 12. Now Texas needs to rush their guys back to Texas Memorial Stadium because TCU has a massive army, and now West Virginia has a pretty decent sized army in the north, so Texas needs to be careful with that warmonger penalty, that they don't anger everyone and send everyone against them, because then they're having to fight a 2-front war. Let's see what else is going on. We have Oklahoma looking really good. Kansas and Kansas State not looking too great, but Kansas State definitely has a decent military. Kansas, and now Iowa State. See, Iowa State was first to building a military, but now they're about equal with Baylor. And because they've been at war with Baylor, that's why. Now they made peace, so maybe now they'll have a chance to build up. But that long war with Baylor with nothing really happening has put Iowa State from towards the top of the list in military towards now down towards the bottom with Oklahoma State and Kansas. Oklahoma State still only has, it didn't take a war with them to build it, but they still only have about the same amount of units as Texas Tech. So an invasion by Oklahoma and TCU, or a joint invasion or a single one, would be death to the Cowboys. And it looks like that's what they're going to get, because TCU is right on their borders. Oklahoma's kind of right on their borders. And no declaration of war yet. West Virginia builds the Great Library. They now also have their flaming couches, which is a trebuchet, as you can see right there. That's not the trebuchet, but that's I'm pretty sure what it is. They launch flaming couches at their enemies. And there is the joint declaration of war I was expecting between TCU and Oklahoma. So they both join forces against Oklahoma State and push in. Oklahoma State unfortunately sends their units towards Oklahoma's side, allowing TCU complete access to Boone Pickens Stadium. So Oklahoma State's biggest middle finger was not allowing Oklahoma to get to their stadium first. But TCU is going to take it. Boone Pickens Stadium is now purple and white, and that is going to be an F in the chat for Oklahoma State. At least we got a little bit of bedlam. Wasn't much, but it was a little bit. Alrighty. So that's 2 teams eliminated. We're now down to 8 left. We're starting to see that ripple effect. You can see the ripple effect really well in small matches like this, where you can just watch the teams progress around the stadium. Kansas State does have Willie the Wildcat. The flaming couches have not come into play yet. We'll probably see a few more. Kansas is apparently a place everyone wants to visit. Oh, there's respect for the TCU victory. It was a good job by TCU. That was a very good effort by TCU. They had the military, now they have the extra production, so that's going to put them in a great spot to be competing against Texas, who now also has 2 cities on their border. So, let's see what happens here. Oh, I didn't realize who said the TCU. I get why you don't want the TCU. It was a Baylor fan. I get it. Okay. Alright, so let's see. Everyone has a decent military outside of Kansas, Iowa State, and Baylor at this point. Baylor's actually got... Baylor and Iowa State's are okay. Baylor's in a good spot where it's hard to invade. Kansas is going to be in trouble. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Texas and TCU are definitely the 2 powerhouses holding 2 cities each. West Virginia is looking scary. And like I said, with Texas and TCU... they have the biggest militaries, I think. West Virginia's up there, Oklahoma's up there, but if, let's say, Texas goes to war with West Virginia and TCU invades, that military is going to get worn out between 2 different teams. They also have the warmonger penalty, so if everyone declares war on one of them, they're in trouble. Kansas builds a statue of Zeus, which helps their military production, or their military strength, but we'll see. They don't have much of a military yet. So we're going to keep going. We're at turn 250 or so, and everything's pretty peaceful right now. Alright, we're just going to keep watching the ripple go around the team movement, go around the map. And then no wars, nothing crazy yet. But it's bound to happen. It's going to happen soon. Let's see how Baylor's doing. Baylor does not have much land. Compared to everyone else, Baylor has a very small amount of land. They did not expand very far. And Iowa State kind of got into their territory with this land expansion right here before they could get out. West Virginia and Iowa State have kind of pushed Baylor into this small area. Kind of like Oklahoma State actually made a better use of it. They got out further than Baylor has. But everyone should have pretty similar amounts of land expansion space before they run out of room. I want to see West Virginia and Texas go to war. Everyone has a pretty sizable military outside of Kansas and Baylor, but Baylor I can kind of not fault for how little land they have. But Kansas, I can see getting invaded by Kansas State pretty quickly. Especially these pikemen to these knights. The pikemen will eat the knights up like nothing. So we're going to keep going. There's the flaming couches are just kind of exploring the land. Seeing if there's anything good to light on fire. Surprisingly, no wars yet. Everyone's just kind of figuring out what they want to do. I don't know what they're producing. Kansas builds the Great Wall, so that's their answer to being the weakest, is that they're going to protect themselves with that Great Wall. That's been actually pretty good at helping teams go from probably the next to be eliminated to lasting for quite a while in the game. Like, the Great Wall has been hard to overcome, at least until later on in the game. And Kansas State's going to give it their best shot. They're going to invade Kansas, and they're going to use their Willie the Wildcats to try and take over David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium. They're inside the wall, but do they have enough power and strength to get through Kansas's now growing military and take the city? I don't think they do, but we'll see. Kansas has two wonders to West Virginia's 1 and Texas's 1. And there we go. So they're going to make peace, and Texas and TCU are going to go to war with each other. So it's going to be the battle of the two giants in the game so far. Now Texas needs to be careful because West Virginia is right on the border of Jones AT&T Stadium, and Oklahoma's right on the border of Boone Pickens. So TCU seems to be smartly leaving some of their units down south to prepare for Oklahoma, but that leaves Amon G. Carter Stadium wide open for Texas to swoop in and bring down to the red. Kansas is focusing on wonders as they build Machu Picchu. I don't see where they put it, but it's there somewhere. And Amon G. Carter falls to Texas. So TCU has lost their capital. And they still have a decent military, but now it's going to be just down to Boone Pickens, which they captured. So it's going to be a weakened state capital. And all right, so they're going to keep pushing. It looks like TCU is going to be running out of units fast. So Texas is doing a good job. West Virginia could come in and take Jones AT&T Stadium right now if they wanted to, because Texas is accruing a warmonger penalty for all of this, and their military is all down here in the south. So if you don't want Texas to start running away with the game, you need to start limiting the amount of cities they have by taking Jones AT&T. And maybe if you can take their capital, that's great. Boone Pickens is... Oh, sorry. Boone Pickens fell, so that is going to be the end of TCU. So that is an F in the chat for TCU. They have been eliminated from the game. And that's what I'm saying. They had 2 cities. They were the second team, but just Texas came through and pushed it. Now, Texas needs to be careful that they used all those military units and this warmonger penalty that Oklahoma and West Virginia don't invade. Or Iowa State. They're looking pretty big up there, too. So TCU has been eliminated from the game. And Kansas has decided to start worshiping. They're doing their own thing. Kansas is doing whatever Kansas wants to do. And they're playing a whole different game from everyone else, I think. But so now would be West Virginia and Oklahoma's best time to join together, declare war against Texas, and invade. Even get Iowa State involved if you want to. And that's nothing against Texas. I'm just saying from a point of strategy, that is the best. This is the best time to do so. So, no, not playing favorites, trying to play impartial here. But let's see. But yeah, it looks like neither team's going to do that. So Texas is using their 4 cities of 10 to ramp up their production, ramp up their science output. They're so far ahead technologically from everyone else now with muskets that, I mean, that's not so far, but that is farther ahead than anyone else, that they're going to start running away with things if they don't have everyone kind of don't have everyone kind of try to put them back in their place. So Texas has been very, very aggressive, and it could pay off if everyone, instead of fighting Texas, fights each other. Texas just needs to wait now. Wait until their military is built back up, and wait for West Virginia and Baylor, or Iowa State and West Virginia to go to war. When they weaken, then Texas can wake up, take over whoever is the weakest, and then go back to sleeping until someone else does the work for them. That's Texas's best strategy at this point, but they're going to instead not do that and declare war against Oklahoma. So we now have the Red River shootout happening down here in the south. Texas is the aggressor in this. They're going to push in towards Oklahoma. They don't want to wait for they don't want to wait for their lives to be over. We'll just go with that. So they're going to push in and take Oklahoma on head-to-head. They got to be careful of West Virginia, though. That's the biggest problem, because their military is getting defeated here. Oklahoma's pushing back with a lot of strength. And Iowa State, Baylor, even Baylor now is looking pretty good. Iowa State, Baylor, West Virginia, all threats for Texas at the moment. Even Kansas and Kansas State, but they're on the opposite end of the continent from them, so it's a bit harder for them to get there. So Texas's military is kind of pulling back from this war with Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not pushing them further and trying to waste their military going and pushing in to take T-Boone Pickens. So they may be waiting to see if West Virginia makes a move before they make their own move. But Texas's military is weakened. So West Virginia is now is your time. If you're going to do it now. Kansas is even back up to strength. Like, Texas is probably the weakest military team in this game right now. Like, we can take a look. Oh, that's the wrong one. We can take, that's the wrong one again. We can take a look at their military strength right here. So Texas, all the teams that are left, it's Texas, who's here. Kansas is actually a little bit higher than Texas. Oklahoma is fallen after their war with Texas. Kansas State's a little bit higher than them. Iowa State is in the middle. And Baylor is in the middle. So Texas is second behind, surprisingly, Kansas. And West Virginia. West Virginia is the most. So Texas is in third. West Virginia has the largest military in the game. But Kansas is in second, which is surprising to me because they were so far behind for so long. Instead of going after Texas, though, Kansas is going to go after Iowa State. So there's two armies on the other side of the map from Texas, which is the best place for them to be in Texas's eyes, going after each other instead of trying to fight for a common good of the largest team in the game. So this is going to be a big fight between these two, and it's going to weaken them significantly. So this is a great time for Baylor or Kansas State to come in afterwards and swoop in and steal Jack Trice or David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium. But you got to let them weaken each other first. So they're going to go to war. So this is going to drop Kansas from second to towards the bottom, I'm sure, in terms of military strength. Texas and Oklahoma have kind of given up. Texas is focusing most of their military on the West Virginia side instead of the Oklahoma side, which is smart because Oklahoma's military is no longer a threat. And West Virginia's is absolutely a threat. So if I'm Baylor, I'm waiting a few more turns before declaring war on Iowa State myself. Because their military is just depleting. They're down to the last few people. Oklahoma now has a Pantheon giving them ranged combat strength, which will help in their war with Texas, or a potential invasion from Kansas State. So Kansas is making that push towards Jack Trice, and they brought it down to the yellow already. So Kansas may actually eliminate Iowa State from the game right here. They have plenty of melee units, and they do. So there we go. Kansas has eliminated Iowa State from the game. That is an F in the chat for Iowa State, and the team that started out with the largest military on par with Texas is now out. And you can see that's what happened with Texas and Iowa State. They're great parallels of each other. Both of them started out with the largest military. Texas did something with it by taking a team that had no army and successfully capturing it. Iowa State failed to capture it, wasting most of their army in the process, but not ending their war and continuing it until they had no military, and now they've been eliminated and come in 6th place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7th place. 6th place. It has to be 6th place. I can count. So, looks like West Virginia now has their Mountaineer unit. So, Baylor has a little bit of wiggle room. They should go after Kansas right now. If I were Baylor, I would take Jack Trice. I'd be worried about West Virginia, but I would risk it to take Jack Trice and give myself that extra city advantage over the Mountaineers later on in the game. And maybe hope Texas joins and attacks West Virginia instead. Kansas State is going to declare war on Oklahoma. We'll see how that range strength does. Kansas has finished the Hagia Sophia as the Wildcats push in towards Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. So they have their Willie the Wildcat. They do not have their other unique unit yet, an EcoCat. And Oklahoma Memorial Stadium begins taking damage. So it's brought down to about a little over 3/4, now a little over half. Now to the red. And Oklahoma has been eliminated from the game. That is an F in the chat for Oklahoma. So Kansas State, Kansas, Baylor, West Virginia, and Texas are left for the Big 12. This is going very fast. And Texas has not rebuilt their military yet. Like, it's built, it's rebuilt, but it's very open. Like, unlike the other games, like Michigan State from the Big Ten, where they were weak, they took over, but then they just ramped up military production until they were the juggernauts. Texas hasn't done that. So now every other team is catching up. So what we need is Baylor or West Virginia to take a city from each other and eliminate the other one. So then it's two cities versus 4. And then if you have a joint declaration of war against Texas, then that evens the spread a little bit. So let's see what happens next. I think at this point everyone is at peace. Let's check the global relations. Yeah, everyone's at peace. They've all denounced each other. The Kansas schools hate each other, and Texas hates Baylor and West Virginia. So that sounds about right. But there are no wars at the moment. Everyone's at peace. So yeah, I think Baylor lost their opportunity. They had a great chance to go take Jack Trice from a week in Kansas. But now Kansas has improved their military. They brought their strength back up, and now I think they have a much bigger military than Baylor would have had. So I think Baylor's opportunity there is lost. West Virginia, I think, still has the largest military in the game. Texas is starting to rebuild their military now, so they were slow to do it, but now they've gotten there. Kansas is on the move. They're going to invade Kansas State, it looks like. So expect that declaration of war here very soon, is my guess. And yeah, look, their military is leaving Jack Trice Stadium open. There's the declaration of war. So Kansas is going to invade Kansas State after founding Catholicism. So emboldened by enhanced Catholicism, they're going to go in and try and take Kansas State out of the game. This is the perfect opportunity for Baylor to go in and take Jack Trice Stadium. They had the opportunity. They lost it. Now they have it back. So let's see what happens. All right, so Kansas State is doing okay, holding on. Kansas is pushing what they can in there at the borders of Bill Snyder Family Football Stadium. They've started to do damage on it. But no... Oh, there we go. So now they're doing a lot more damage. It was in the red for a flash. Now it's back out. Now it's back in. It has no health, but Kansas has their closest melee unit far away. So can they get him down into position quick enough? No, they cannot. So they make peace with them. So they're weakened. They weakened him. They almost took Bill Snyder Family Football Stadium, but they didn't. So now they have to wait at least 10 turns for a peace agreement. Texas has rebuilt their military, so they're pretty strong again. They've utilized their 4 cities. So good on Texas for doing that. Baylor needs to invade Jack Trice right now. Instead, they're going to build the mausoleum of Halicarnassus. And let's see. Tom Herman entered the industrial area, so Texas is now an industrial team. And things are not looking good for everyone else unless they all gang up together against Texas. they've kind of squandered their opportunity to take Texas on while they were weak. They land bomb Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. And West Virginia has been quiet. They have that military. They have all the Mountaineers and the Flaming Couches. And they haven't done anything with them. So Texas is going to invade Kansas State. They were weakened from that fight with Kansas. They have pretty much no military left. And so Texas wants to control Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. They want their rival stadium. And they have it surrounded. So, I mean, that's a huge, huge blow for Kansas State. They have no one to defend it, and the city's surrounded. So it begins taking damage. West Virginia, now's the time to go after Jones AT&T Stadium, but they're not gonna. Oklahoma Memorial Stadium down to half health, down to the deep red, with tons of melee units in the area, and now in Texas's control. So Texas moves on towards the Bill Snyder Family Football Stadium with all of their units after capturing Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. It's surrounded. They build at Alhambra, and to celebrate, they bring Bill Snyder Family Football Stadium down to the red. It's not dead yet. They need a melee unit, which they don't have one nearby. This musketman's the closest. He's on his way. West Virginia needs to attack. Look, it's Jones AT&T Stadium is wide open. You can send the Flaming Couches in to trebuchet it. And then any of these melee units can go in and just walk right in and capture it. And then Texas Memorial, the capital, is right there with no one defending it. You have couches and units all over the place, and you're not going to capture it. So, Texas has that musketman right on the border now, so that is going to be the end of Kansas State. There we go. So, Texas has taken the Bill Snyder Family Memorial Football Stadium, eliminating Kansas State from the game. That is an F in the chat for Kansas State. And Texas now controls over half the board. So, they have 6 capitals, but they lost a lot of their military strength again. So, if everyone wants to double team or triple team Texas, they could. So, my cat wants to say hello. I don't know if you guys can hear him, but he's trying. And so, let's see what happens. Baylor builds the Temple of Artemis. Ever since their first war, Baylor's been very shy. West Virginia didn't succeed in their war with Baylor, so now they seem afraid to succeed in any other war. But that just leaves Texas open to start rebuilding their military. So they adopted autocracy. That's going to help them with their military production. And they're going to have a fight on their hands. They have to rebuild their military strength up to fight Kansas, Baylor, or West Virginia. But with 6 cities compared to 2 and 1 each, they're not going to be able to do it. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, they can't take them on unless they take them right this second. I'm just shocked that no one's going to war. Like, if all 3 of them went to war, they could knock Texas back quite a bit, and the landscape of this whole thing could shift considerably. Texas has built Notre Dame. Again, that doesn't really matter much for the conference or for the whole game, but everything's pretty peaceful for right now. Texas is slowly rebuilding. They need time to rebuild. They've been at multiple wars, and it's been tough. But Kansas, Baylor, and West Virginia haven't been doing anything. I mean, Baylor's broke. West Virginia is super broke, which is probably why they haven't done anything. They have no gold. And you know why they have no gold is because they have such a massive military and no space. So if they wanted gold, all they had to do was use them, lose some military units in the fight, and take any of Texas's cities. Same with Baylor. Their money is so low because they only have 1 city and very little space. So we'll keep seeing what happens here. Texas is slowly rebuilding. They're looking good. They got riflemen compared to a lot of pikemen and crossbows from everyone else. Kansas is solidly in 2nd place, which just confirms my theory of if the more cities you have, the better chances you have. If you can capture a city quickly, you're in a great spot. Especially if you can capture one with little military used. Alright, so it's been a while since anyone's been at war, but I think once Texas rebuilds, they'll be pushed to go to war with somebody. Kansas looks like they're kind of gearing up for a war with Baylor. But they're grouping. They're all grouped up here in the north, but they haven't made that push yet for anything. So everyone's kind of building their wonders right now. Baylor and West Virginia just doing their thing. So let's keep this thing going. Let's see what happens. Baylor's denounced Kansas. That's a good start. Texas's army is pretty much rebuilt. I mean, it's definitely formidable. Like, they can invade West Virginia right now, and West Virginia, I think, would crumble. Baylor builds the Taj Mahal. They're really trying to build wonders over at Baylor. Alright, so let's keep going. West Virginia's advancing a little bit technologically, and one thing with them being broke is they can't upgrade their units. If they research new upgrades and they want to convert their units to that, they need money to do so. It costs gold to upgrade your units. So that may be why they're sitting here with such outdated flaming... Well, they actually have now updated their flaming couches to cannons. So it's costing them a lot of money to do that. So that could be why they're broke. Texas is rebuilt. They're on the border of West Virginia, not so much on Kansas's end. They've left Kansas with a small group, enough of a deterrent, but not an invading force. They should be going after West Virginia. Baylor does have Bruiser, so that'll help the Bears if they want to actually utilize it and go to war with someone. They haven't been the aggressor once this game. And there's the Angkor Wat. So Texas is building all the forts, all of the good defensive buildings. They have 48 technologies compared to Baylor's 43 and West Virginia's 44. So they're pretty far ahead there. Kansas was in second. Kansas is solidly in second place. Kansas has built a barometer. So there's a lot of religion. I can see a lot of... Kansas is basically trying to spread religion to Texas. But other than that, it's been pretty quiet. There's too many teams to really force a war right now. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer and see if anyone does it naturally. Texas is still rebuilding, so I'm going to give them some time. They're also really, really focused on wonder building, but their military is pretty much back up to strength. So, nothing happening yet, but something's brewing. Something's cooking. We can take a look here. Let's take a look and see what global relations look like. Everyone's denounced everybody except for Baylor and West Virginia. Those two actually don't hate each other. And so, in terms of military, it's Texas all the way. Kansas State's out. Oklahoma's out. Iowa State. So here's all of our stats. We got Baylor down here. West Virginia right there. Kansas and Texas are pretty far above them militarily. In terms of treasury, which is their gold, West Virginia is broke, and Texas is doing okay, but they're not doing as good as Kansas. And Baylor and West Virginia are both broke, which is why we're probably not seeing them do much, which means if they do go to war, they're going to fold. But Kansas has got a pretty decent military too, so Texas and Kansas could do a lot of work. Like, they could easily eliminate Baylor and West Virginia, but they won't. They have them out technologied. They have them out manned. Like West Virginia's still on pikes. At least Baylor's on Gatling guns and musket men. But we're seeing a definite stalemate here at the moment. Whereas Texas, their military is huge. Like their military is easily the biggest in the game. So what we're gonna do is it's turn 645 right now. If nothing happens by turn 800, which is a long time from now, we're gonna force an all-out war and just see what happens. But we're gonna wait at least a little bit and make sure there's not just like a long-term plot happening here between someone and somebody else. So there's definitely room for expansion still. There's still a few gaps here that teams can fill into. Texas's military is so big it's starting to spill out of their territory into the middle. Same with West Virginia. West Virginia's run out of territory a long time ago. That's why you're seeing cannons and stuff in the ocean. Kansas is probably running out of room here as well. Baylor's definitely out of room. So, everyone's been pretty quiet. Texas was so aggressive up to this point. I'm surprised that they've dropped off so much. I'm just going to keep rapid clicking and see if anything happens. What's going to happen is I'm going to crash the game. So, alright, so the people disappointed, yeah, Texas is above and beyond. Like 16,000 to Kansas's 8, Baylor's 3. So, I mean, they have almost 4 times the amount of a military that West Virginia and Baylor have. I think more than 4 times the amount for Baylor, at least. So they should be able to just... West Virginia is going to fall, like, immediately upon a declaration of war. Luckily, no one seems to be interested in actually invading them, so... Texas now does have Matthew McConaughey, so maybe that's just what they were waiting for. They needed the all right before they could get permission to go. So you don't want to wait too long and waste your Matthew McConaughey's. They have a lot of Matthew McConaughey's. Okay, that is a ton of Matthew McConaughey. So many Lincolns. Okay, let's see. They got a lot of them on Kansas's border as well as West Virginia's, but West Virginia is definitely the the focus here. The Mountaineers are still on... Oh, that's Baylor's borders. Never mind. Okay. It's yellow border on yellow border, so it's hard to tell. But West Virginia's run out of room. They're easily expanding to where they can't really expand further. Texas has got... Every unit is now almost Matthew McConaughey. He has almost enveloped their entire army. They're all Matthew McConaughey on this blessed day. At this point. So, Les Miles has entered the modern era, which means they have the ability to get nuclear weapons. And they also have adopted order. So, different from Texas. They're going to not like that. So we're going to keep going. We got 90 turns till I force all-out war. And we'll see what happens. So, man, I really wish Texas would just declare, or Kansas would just declare war on Baylor and West Virginia. I think that's what's going to end it. Is if one of them can take Baylor or West Virginia, that'll be the catalyst to just push everything else. Push everything else into the end here. They have all the McConaughey's. I mean, Texas is spelling out in the middle. West Virginia is spelling out in the middle. Kansas and Baylor are pretty self-contained, but they're running out of room fast. Texas has a plane. They have a great war bomber. So that's going to help. West Virginia has upgraded all of their mountaineers to riflemen, so they're slowly catching up. Baylor still has some pikemen, which is really bad for Baylor. But they also have riflemen, so that just means they're broke and they're not able to update them. West Virginia joins autocracy. And they denounce Kansas. So now I think everyone has denounced each other. I think we've finally hit the point where everyone has denounced everyone else. But no war were declared. So we got another about 50 turns until all-out war starts. And I'm thinking we're going to get to that. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think a natural war is going to happen anytime soon. We could be seeing a stalemate for ever if I don't. So Baylor's the happiest. Kansas has no happiness. Everyone else is pretty happy. So yeah, the Big 12 was all about offense at the beginning of this, and then as soon as Texas has assimilated most people into Matthew McConaughey's, they slowed way down. Apparently, Matthew McConaughey is not cool enough for West Virginia, Baylor, or Kansas. I think Texas is scared to fight Kansas. They don't want to lose. Texas has a lot more to lose from fighting Kansas than Kansas does. So, 40 turns left until we force an all-out war between everybody. I think it should be Texas and Kansas don't join forces, but they both go to war. Kansas with Baylor, Texas with West Virginia. They'll both easily steamroll them and then take it from there. We might actually get nukes this time. You're right. The nuclear weapons are somewhere in the middle here, so we're getting close. We're getting very close. And the middle is slowly closing in. So, I mean, everyone's moving closer and closer to that middle. And units are running out of room. Alright, listen, 20 turns until all-out war. And that probably will be the end of the Big 12. We'll see. I can see Texas taking this and running with it. Or they're just going to all immediately make peace. I mean, Texas has got 6 planes there, 5 planes here. That's it. But then they're the only... Kansas has 2 triplanes, and that's it. So Texas has air superiority. Alright, so 10 more turns until all-out war. 9. If they all make peace, I'll just keep sending them back to war with each other until this is all over. Texas cannot screw this up. They need to, like, they have so many units. It's just so above everybody else that they should be able to steamroll this. So, all right, we have reached turn 800, and like I had said, it was 150 turns of nothing happening. So what I'm going to do, Texas is the largest team in the game, so I'm going to have them be the aggressor here. They're going to declare war to everybody, and then I'm going to have Kansas, the second largest team, declare war to everybody else, and then West Virginia or Baylor, I don't care who's going to... I'm going to have Baylor be the aggressor and declare war on West Virginia. So, so everyone is at war with everybody else. That is how this is going to end. Let's see what happens. So Baylor and West Virginia are actually going to fight each other, which is not the right move. But Kansas is going to move their whole military up into Baylor and West Virginia territory. Texas is moving it to wherever they have an opportunity. And like I said, like I predicted, West Virginia and Baylor are just going to crumble under the might of Texas and Kansas. Texas actually has David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium starting to take damage. Baylor and Kansas made peace immediately. Well, if everyone else starts making peace, we'll see what happens. But Kansas probably wants to turn and focus on Texas because Kansas's military got destroyed. Like they're there. They're still a military, but Texas is overpowering them considerably. As David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium gets to the red, Matthew McConaughey's just want to assimilate it. Milan Puskar Stadium is in the yellow, and West Virginia has no military left. So there we go. Kansas and West Virginia both lost their original capitals, but unfortunately for West Virginia, that was their only city. So that is an F in the chat for West Virginia, who has been eliminated from the game. Kansas now lost their biggest capital, and that is going to be a huge blow to the Jayhawks. So it's now down to Baylor and Kansas, and who wants to be assimilated to Matthew McConaughey last. I think Baylor will fall faster because they're fighting them with archaeologists and workers versus actual military. But it looks like they're going to try to take the actual military out first to make the assimilation of Baylor easier. And so they have Kansas's military defeated. Jack Trice is down to under half health and immediately swallowed into Matthew McConaughey's Borg. So that is going to be an F in the chat for Kansas. It is now down to Texas and Baylor. So F in the chat for Kansas. They did really well, and it was a good stalemate, but unfortunately Texas just overpowered them. And so now it's Baylor's turn. Matthew McConaughey's knocking on his doorstep. And Bevo. They actually have upgraded They've upgraded from Matthew McConaughey to Bevo. So Bevo's on the doorstep of McLean Stadium. And they bring it down to the red. Bevo did get eliminated there, but there's more Bevos behind them. So don't worry about that. They're going to bring him forward. And there we go. Bevo captures Baylor's McLean Stadium. That is an F in the chat for Baylor. They managed to do really well for starting off really terribly. So, like I said, not having a military that late in the game isn't always a detriment, but it's usually never going to win you the game. So, all right, that is it for the Big 12. Texas has won, and we are going to take a quick break, and we will be back with the Conference USA is next. So we will see you guys shortly.